Is there a motion to call the March 21st, 2020 Sag Harbor School Board of Education meeting to order?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Jordana and Yorgos, all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Absent is Alex, Sandy, and Chris.
Thank you.
Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. On to public input number one. Anyone is here for public input number one or online, you can raise your hand. We will call upon you. Board of Education encourages public participation in school-related matters. The public input is reserved for comments related to the agenda and non-agenda items and does not require sign-up. The period for public input is unrestricted to accommodate as many as possible. Any group or organization wishing to address the board must identify a single spokesperson. Comments should be as brief as possible. No speaker will be permitted to speak for longer than 3 minutes during public input number one. If a member of the public wants to address the board more than once, they will have to wait until an opportunity to do so at public input number two. The board will not permit in public session discussions regarding or concerns about individual district personnel or students. Persons wishing to discuss such matters should contact the administration or appropriate persons. If a member of the community fails to conduct themselves appropriately or violates the rules set forth herein, the board has the right to suspend that community member's privilege to speak during public input. Persons making comments at a board meeting will address remarks to the president and may direct questions or comments to board members or other district personnel only upon the approval of the president. Board members and the superintendent shall have the privilege of asking and answering questions of any person who addresses the board. The president shall be responsible for the orderly conduct of the meeting and shall rule on such matters when necessary. With that, is there anybody here for public input number one, both in person and or online? Mr. Fisher.
No hands up.
Anybody here in person for public input number one? Okay. We will move on to the superintendent's report. We're expecting Ms. Tyson. I'm just going to ask Mr. Nichols to update the board and community on the COVID update, and then we will switch to the park update second.
Great, thanks, Brian. Before I talk a little bit about COVID, I just wanted to acknowledge the efforts and the achievements of our high school boys basketball team, which traveled to Glens Falls for the state Final Four this past weekend. They ended up losing in the semifinal game. It was a hotly contested game. We lost by, I don't know, 3 or 4 points. But my takeaway from having watched the boys over the years, and especially over the last month or so, is I was so impressed with the way they played the game and the way they conducted themselves, both in practice, but even in the heat of competition. So even while I was watching them in the midst of a very tight game, our players were the type of players that if they went up for a layup and the defender fell down in the midst of the competition, they would help the opposing player up and then go about playing. And, it was really nice to see none of the bad sportsmanship that we read about. None of that was exhibited by our players, or for the most part, the players of the other teams. So I just want to congratulate the coach, Mr. Fujita, on doing a great job with the kids, both during the season and all the work he does outside of the season. I want to congratulate Mr. McGovern for sort of orchestrating and organizing everything. Not a small task, taking the team up there and having them stay overnight and do all that. But most of all, the players and their families for all the work they put in. I was very, very proud of them, and I'm sure the community was. So that's what I want to say.
That was wonderful. And I read in the paper, I didn't realize it was the first time in 44 years. So it's a great accomplishment for those students.
Yeah. With regard to COVID, I just wanted to stay consistent with updating the community as I have in the past. The current conditions in Suffolk County remain good. The test positive rate that was published yesterday, which is for the day before, was 1.8%. The 7-day average was 1.7%. Both low numbers. Cases per 100,000 residents in Suffolk County was 4, and the 7-day average was 6.6. All of those statistics are low compared to where we were in and around the turn of the year. Having said that, it is worth noting that in other parts of the world, COVID is rearing its head and cases are increasing. So in mainland China, which is a sort of a different deal because they had a different strategy than the rest of the world in terms of the zero COVID policy. Cases are skyrocketing in Shanghai, and we'll see how that plays out. But more pertinent for the United States is we traditionally have been 3 or 4 weeks behind many of the European nations in terms of how COVID plays out here. And there has been a significant uptick in cases in most of the European countries. And for the most part, the experts seem to say that it's due to 3 things. Number one, the new variant BA2 is increasing in terms of the percentage of total cases. Number 2, there's waning immunity from vaccines and even prior infection. And number 3, a lot of the mitigation measures like masks have been lifted. So what does that mean for us here in Sag Harbor? At this point, nothing. You know, we are mask optional. I don't foresee that changing in the next couple of weeks. Having said that, we do have to monitor, and we won't be the only ones monitoring it. What happens here in the United States and here in Suffolk County, and whether or not we mirror, as we have in the past, what's happening in Europe. And we'll keep you updated regarding developments, and if we need to adjust, we will.
Thank you, Mr. Nichols.
Yeah.
Any board questions for Mr. Nichols on COVID update or the basketball game? Move on to the park update.
So the park update. Tonight, I'm going to.
So,
What's that?
go back.
I'm going to go. Tonight, I'm going to talk a little bit about the history to give some context for the public who may be watching, and then ultimately talk a little bit about the plan, and then turn it over to some of the people from the park board who are here tonight. And I might as well introduce them. I can't see everybody. I have Greg Scavone in the back left, Amy Yardley, Rachel D, Janine Rayano, and Ed Hicks. They're here, and they've been meeting with us for the last couple of months, trying to come up with a design, and I thank them for all their efforts. So the history is that going back to last year, the school district had expressed to the park that they had some concerns related to the condition of the athletic fields and facilities. And that started discussions about how we could partner thoughtfully so that we could come up with fields that we thought were better suited for our students, and also perhaps help the park board create a park that would be better for the community. So we ended up coming up with a term sheet, and the outline of the term sheet, or the key components of it, are that the school district would ultimately go into a long-term lease contingent upon a bond referendum passing. And that bond referendum would fund what would be improvements to the athletic fields that we think would meet student needs. And so that happened late last spring, summer. And so we've been meeting since pretty much August. And I was talking to Janine earlier today, and I think we had considered in some total 11 different designs for the park. And there was a lot of work behind the scenes on the part of the park board members. And I won't get into all the different iterations of each plan, but basically the park board and the school was really committed to three, I think, key components or key considerations. One was, what are the school district athletic field needs? Because that has to be addressed within whatever plan we ultimately selected. Number two, we really wanted to keep the traditional aesthetic of the park. It's a beautiful, beautiful facility, and we didn't want to come up with a design that took away from the feel you get when you come up there, which is it's a beautiful setting with a lot of green, and we didn't want it to be industrial looking or anything like that. And number three, we wanted to, related to that, minimize any environmental impact. So we didn't want to go into taking an unnecessary amount of trees down. We had to be concerned with environmental impacts and those types of things. So those three principles guided the design process. And what you see before you on the screen is really the result of all those discussions. So if I use this laser, to the left part of that visual is where you would sort of roll up to the park now. This is where the parking lot would be over here. Right here is where the current varsity baseball diamond is, and in the new plan that is, renovated and refurbished. There would be a second baseball diamond that would be sort of opposite that. And the dimensions of these fields are roughly 300 feet down the left and right field lines and about 320, 325 feet to center field. And those are approximations at this point. And then in the middle of the design is a full-size track. And this track would be similar to what you would see in many districts, like Southampton. If you've been to Southampton High School, they have a track like that. And that track would be, this part of the track is pretty much where the current girls' softball field is. So this would be reworked. And in the middle of the track would be a field that could be used for field hockey and or soccer. And then in the back portion of the park, back here, which is currently where the girls' field hockey practices, would be a softball indoor little league field, and then there would be another one over here. And the key, being a little bit redundant here, but some of the key considerations in this plan were to limit the impact to the area that I'm outlining right here. In other words, to try to keep within the current footprint, if you will, of the open space and not get into this area or any of this area. These two areas that that are gray are just access points for emergency vehicles should we need them. There's one on that side, there's one over here. There's a lot of details that need to be worked out in terms of where bathrooms are going to be located, where seating is going to be located, those types of things. But in talking to our architect at H2M, actually several architects, and Ed Hollander, who has been working with the park board, they're confident that they can locate those additional facilities within this plan or within this layout design. I don't want to say everything. I would rather turn it over to some of the members of the park board to comment, but I'll say one last thing, which is that in talking to Janine earlier today, she reminded me that Ed Hollander and Severio from H2M, our architect, both said that in this design there was ample room for additional landscaping, so that when you come up to the field or to the park, you're just not looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fields and a track, but that there would be landscaping in there that would break it up. And my sense is that it's going to be equally as beautiful, if not more beautiful than what's currently there after it's done. So that's sort of an overview of what we've done to date. I'll turn it over to you, Janine, if you want to add anything.
Sure, thank you very much. Hi, everyone. Thank you for inviting us.
We just need you to come up here. so we-
Here, I'll sit over
And
here.
everyone at home can see. We want to make sure everybody at home can.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for inviting us. I'm from the park board. I have my whole committee that participated with the school and their committee, and thank you very much for spending the time. Just so people at home know, we were very dedicated, both the school and the park, to get together on a weekly basis for a very long time. And it's only recently that we abandoned those weekly meetings to keep each other informed and to discuss those things that were important to both parties. At some point, it became apparent, and the school is generous enough to enlist their expert H2M to get the updated survey that we needed to see just where things should go. And with that, some of the topography information so that we can make better decisions about where fields should go. Because if you just pick where you want them and then you realize it's just not possible. So just so you know, it seems like it should have taken a lot less time to get to where we are. If you said, well, I think I could have laid that out. Frankly, it's impossible because we've had a lot of different, iterations of the plan, and they were changed subject to all the things that Jeff Nichols said to you today, all the things that we considered, the community, the needs, the school's needs, the wants, the lists, the way we thought it should look, how would it aesthetically affect the park, how would the community react to it, and what we needed. So that being said, I just want to say that it was a very, very enjoyable experience, even though we all worked very hard. We learned a lot. And now that we have a design and we're very proud of the design, we're hoping that the community will get behind us. We really feel that they'll benefit from it. We've had a lot of interest over the years at the park about whether or not we would have a track. We've had a lot of asking about when we could update the fields, what could we do? The park, of course, is a not-for-profit. And frankly, the school is our best partner we've had in all these years. They've been with us, they've been using our fields. We have a contract. So school came up with the idea, they consulted with their experts, we got our experts together. And what you have before you right now to contemplate and think about and sort of absorb is the field design itself. As Jeff said, there will be some amenities, additional bathrooms, dugouts, paths for walking or biking. And, then of course, hopefully some nice landscaping that will soften the hard edges if any. We really are confident that we took enough time to think about these things. And, I don't know what else to say at this point, except for that we've all worked very hard. I don't know if any of my fellow committee members have anything else to say, but I can tell you we were really committed to just improving only the area that was already clear. We did not want to invade the vegetation, and because we really feel that there's a big network of people who are really interested in preserving our natural habitats and the natural look of the park, and we're worked very hard to keep it that way. So we hope you appreciate the hard work.
I think
I'm
it's
looking
admirable.
forward to going to the next
Everybody, I know everyone spent a lot of hours on
Yeah,
the school
we're
side,
looking forward.
committee, subcommittee, the park board, their committees, and everybody coming out. So appreciate everyone's work on that.
Thank you.
I think it's gonna be great. Anybody have any questions about it at this point?
I have one additional comment, and then we can entertain some questions. In terms of the timing of this, let me put my back to the Janine. Initially, the school district was hoping to go out and put this bond referendum on the May vote. Because we were so thorough and thoughtful in the process, I think that's rushed at this point. It most definitely is rushed. And to allow for ample time for the community to ask all the questions that they need to ask and for us to adequately explain the benefits of this plan. I've spoken to our school attorney and bond counsel, and we're tentatively shooting for putting this bond referendum on the library vote. And Mary, I believe that is September 29th.
A Thursday, yes. September 29th.
That's the plan at this point. Happy to answer any questions.
Just comment, I just, having served on the committee, just want to say thanks to the park board for all the hard work that went into this. And, you know, Jeff, you talked about that there's so many competing considerations and trying to balance keeping the historical aesthetic of the park with trying to upgrade the facilities and all those things. And it's a lot of work that went into it. And I think the end result is a great one that would maintain the beauty of the park, but have better feels both for the school and for the community. So I just want to say thanks to all the members of the park board who are also volunteers for everything they did. You know?
I want to echo that. I think it's a phenomenal job, and just I thank everybody for putting so much time into it. I think the track is just so exciting because that's something that the kids and the community haven't had before and has been missing from this community. So it's just such a huge add-on that I think is going to be great. And I also think that just looking at, you know, we have at the school sports where some of them are shared with East Hampton because either we don't have enough participation, but now it also won't be because we don't have the facility. So that's really exciting to see how that might shift, you know, different sports that we have here. And it's just awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Looking forward to it. I think it'll be fun. It'll be work. It'll be fun.
It's not gonna be easy. It's
I
always.
wanted to add one thing. I apologize, I missed it. I was coming from another state and my flight was 3 hours late. So very painfully was trying to tell the pilot that I had a board of ed meeting to go to. It didn't seem to matter. But anyway, I also, what I love about this project is not only that it just elevates this institution, the park, which is part of everyone's childhood, and they grew up in Sag Harbor, but that in doing the service to enhancing what our students have, it will also enhance what our community has. And anytime that we as a district can invest in increasing facilities that benefit not only students, but the whole community, I think that it serves Sag Harbor really well. And I've heard from a lot of people who don't have kids in the district but live in Sag Harbor that they are grateful that the park board and the school district is working so well together to just provide an even better facility for everybody. So I want to thank you. And your hard work is not done unnoticed in the community.
Does anyone else from the community want to say anything about this that's here? You guys are more than welcome to stay for our whole meeting. We wanted to have you first. We'd love to have you stay. You guys.
You know how to clear a room.
We know. We appreciate everybody coming. Thank you. Moving on to the administrator's report. Principal's report.
Yeah.
So principals report. So why don't we, I think that the last meeting we had Chris had talked a little bit about perhaps having, as part of the budget process, the elementary, the two building principals speak a little bit about some budget highlights, because that was traditionally something that we did. So as a precursor to Ms. Buscemi's presentation, I thought start with Mr. Malone and then have Ms. Carrier or vice versa, whatever order it is, have you guys present.
Works for me. I'm good.
Yep, let me go and we'll start the budget presentation and their
We're
slides
gonna
are,
merge 6.1 and 6.2 of the agenda.
yeah, their slides are embedded in there. Hold on. Let me share my screen. Okay, so everyone can see that. That's good. Okay, so Tonight, we're gonna just we're gonna be doing a full budget review tonight. So in the past few meetings, we've talked about the budget, but we've really been looking at the budget in pieces, really, in piecemeal. We've actually started, our first budget presentation was on salaries and benefits, and then from there, we added all of the departments and we looked at the building budgets all separately. So tonight, we're just gonna combine all of that information and go through the budget that you'll be asked to adopt at the next meeting on April 11th. So nothing has changed since the last meeting, since March 7th.
Are they gonna present?
They are right after this.
Okay,
So the slides were sort of added in,
Okay,
but they're right after this. So nothing has changed since the last meeting. Our property tax levy limit is still 2.73%. Our projected tax levy increase, of course, is going to be under the limit. It's 2.5%. Our budget increase is also going to be 2.5%. So the proposed budget is under the tax cap for the 11th straight year, which is unbelievable that we've had the tax cap now for 11 years. It's just gone so quickly. While preserving all programs, extracurricular activities, athletics, and the continued investment in instructional technology and equipment. So I just want to stress, though, in the next, during the presentation, you're going to see that there's been a lot of reductions made in various aspects of the budget and areas of the budget. So even though we were able to reduce the budget in our contractual lines, our BOCES budget was reduced, we made some small reductions in materials and supplies and equipment. I do want to stress that no programs are being eliminated next year. All of our current programs are still being carried into next year. And those reductions were made based on our need for next year, student needs, based on looking at the budget, seeing what we were spending. We did some trend analysis to bring some of those numbers down. And there was also a lot of contingency that was built into the budget in previous years that we don't really need to have for next year. So those reductions were made. And I just want everyone to know that all of the programs are continuing. And we have Mr. Malone, who is just going to highlight some of programs at his building.
Good evening, everyone. Just for those watching that have not met me yet, I'm Matt Malone, the elementary principal, and the main highlight of this year's budget overview for the elementary school is that the pre-K through 5 program that I believe we should all be so proud of is maintained. Just last year, we expanded our pre-K offering to include a full day experience for the 4-year-olds of the district. That is maintained, as well as the instructional offering K through 5 at the elementary school. The budget ensures that the resources are available for our teachers so that the needs of all of our students are met. Some keys to pay attention to is we've been committed to small class size here in Sag Harbor, and this budget continues to support that. We have an average at the elementary school of just about 18 per class. And that smaller class size allows the instructors to really get to know the children well, get to know their needs, and ensure that they make adjustments to their instructional practices so that they can reach the academic standards that are set. We also have for a long time been committed to an inclusionary model. So children that may have special academic needs are kept in the class with their same age peers, and their needs are met through differentiation within the room. And also children who are learning English as a new language, their supports are in place, and they receive a strong academic program pre-K through 5. Aside from the important reading, writing, science, social studies instruction that's offered so that the children develop a good foundation before they head off to work with Ms. Carriero and her staff at the middle school and high school, we make sure that the program targets the needs of the whole child at the elementary schools. So you'll see in this budget that the rich offerings of art, music, physical education, as well as introducing children to project-based learning in the areas of science, technology, engineering. all those rich programs are maintained. Learning continues after the school bell rings, so those enrichment opportunities that are an important part of our after-school experience, those are supported by this budget. And lastly, you know, I guess sadly, in many of the news articles that we're reading recently across the nation, there's a real need to make sure that children's social and emotional health is supported. And I'm really proud to say that at the elementary school, as well as I know this is done at the middle school and high school, we have professionals that are on staff full-time to make sure that aside from all the academic supports that must be in place, the social, emotional, and health of our students is supported. We have our full-time nurses, full-time guidance counselors, school psychologists, support from social workers. And that team of professionals works very closely with our teachers and parents to make sure that our children are not only learning, but that they're safe throughout the day and when they go home.
Any questions for Mr. Malone? Board? I heard it was a great, the morning program is back, so.
Oh, yeah.
in the gym.
Yeah,
so
we welcome
Got good news today, so I heard that.
That was wonderful. Another good step forward.
These are just
Questions?
some pictures,
Yeah.
of some
Yeah,
of the
just a
great
few,
programs,
a
and
few highlights.
then we'll move on to the middle high school
Thank you, Mr. Malone.
budget highlight.
All right, hello, everyone. I'm Brittany Carriero, the Pearson Middle High School principal. I'm excited for this budget season because we were able to maintain and enhance our programming at the middle high school. As we see in the first bullet, we're going to continue to enrich the learning experience for all students. We are fortunate enough to have the International Baccalaureate program. We're looking to obviously enhance that. Our plant programming, which is our mini programming for the IB program geared towards our middle school students, which is preparing learners for a new tomorrow. Ms. Rodriguez-Mora has been working on that curriculum and enhancing it with our staff so that we can have a sustained program to make sure our middle schoolers are able to access the tenets of the IB program. Our character education, as Mr. Malone said, as we shift to this post-pandemic world, our mental health of our students needs to be supported. And this character education through our various traditions that we always have, like Whaler Day and Whaler Wars, but also other programming we are looking to support, as well as the arts. We understand that not all of our students might be athletes, but they might be into arts, and we can bring them a very enriched art programming here. Our professional development and programming that we want to focus on in the upcoming years, and to increase our rigor is the International Baccalaureate program, our shift and transition to our next generation learning standard, which New York State has shifted to, and making sure that our staff is well aware so they're prepared for those end of the year assessments like our Regents exams. The diversity, equity, and inclusion piece and models make sure all of our learners and staff feel comfortable and safe in our school, but we're also using the proper language and communication skills so that everyone feels like they are part of the Sag Harbor Union Free School District. And then again, that social emotional piece, Mr. Malone touched on a bit with our support staff, but even enhancing it straight down to our staff on how to talk to students, asking how are you doing, seeing those key things that are going on in the classroom, anyone withdrawn. We need to make sure that we're taking care of everybody and they feel a part of our community. And then new things that we're excited and we're going to enhance. We're going to enrich our world language program by offering French in grade 6. We haven't done this yet, but we have the staff to do it and we're excited about it. We're also going to increase our living environment. So usually, historically in 8th grade, certain students that were accelerated would access our living environment program. Next year, we're having that all 8th graders can access this program. It's a more inclusive model. We've been working hard with our science department to make sure this can happen and that everyone can be successful throughout this. And then the next bullet is about supporting all learners. Our pandemic adjustments, this would be one. We had an addition to our programming in our course of math called Geometry Foundations. We realized with the new standards in mathematics and geometry, there's this proof portion of it. And that some students might struggle with that because it's a very abstract concept. So instead of just going to algebra to straight to geometry, we created this Geometry Foundations course for those learners so they'll be able to access that geometry course once they have the foundations they need. and we're seeing a great success in that. And then additional electives, we just added coding this year, and it's going really well. We have a full course, student enrollment, I apologize, in that class. AP stats, which we historically had, we added an extra section to, but we also allowed access for our 9th and 10th grade learners that want to enhance their programming while in the high school. Food science, which was historically just home economics, we created a science course out of it, so kids that need a science credit are able to have it. We adjusted the syllabus accordingly. And then to support our DEI, or diversity, equity, and inclusion, we've added for next year African American studies and Latin American studies as electives to make sure we're teaching to everybody. So that's what's going on at the middle high school.
Any questions for Ms. Guerriero?
I have just have a couple.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. A lot of exciting stuff on, go back to the slide for a sec, just so
Yep.
that I can reference it. Just a couple quick questions about some of the new stuff we're doing, because I think it's really exciting. In terms of adding French in the 6th grade, do we have a sense of, have we surveyed kids and have a sense of,
So we have a full
Interest?
class section. So
we do,
yes.
wow. So there's a lot of interest. which
So
is
there was a
really
lot of interest. We have to limit it to one section due to teaching time, but we have a full 25 kids signed up for it.
fantastic.
Yeah, so we're excited about that.
Yeah, and then in terms of the living environment, does that mean that they have a, in 7th grade, they'll have the option of electing to take it in 8th grade, or all 8th graders?
So all 8th graders next year, so our rising 8th graders are all going to be accessing living environment. We're working with the science department to tailor those courses so that it might have certain scaffolds so that each learner can access the curriculum.
Terrific, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Guerriero. Ms. Buscemi?
Okay, I'm just gonna edit the pointer, sorry. Thank you.
We'll just note that people watching from home can't see your lady.
Okay.
Identify what we're discussing.
Sorry about
It's not
that.
on the screen.
Alrighty, so we talked about how the tax cap's been around for 11 straight years, and thank you so much, guys, anyway. And this slide really shows all the data that's been sent up to New York State since the 2012-13 school year, and this data can be accessed on their website called Open Book New York. So I think some of the slide is being cut off. Let's see if I could just... Is there a way to not, to get the whole slide showing? Some of
Left
it's
side
not
of
cut off?
this slide is cut off.
I'm just curious.
Everybody's seeing.
Oh, they could see it on there, but they just can't see it on, okay, that's fine. So it really does represent how difficult it is to plan each year for the budget, because the numbers have really swayed. There's been some very big differences in our tax levy limit, and there's been large swings in a lot of different factors that go into completing and computing the tax levy limit. So right down here, you'll see that these are all the tax levy limits that we've had and that we've calculated throughout the years. And when you look at those numbers, you have years where our tax levy limit is as high as 4.7%. And then you have other years where, like last year, our tax levy limit was as low as 1.5%. So that swing alone right there, that's like a $1.3 million difference in funds that we're able to levy. And the importance of having reserves and healthy reserves really helps us be able to stay within the limit, because there are going to be years when we are faced with very large increases in various areas. Health insurance next year may increase again by almost 13%. And we may not be able to make reductions within other sections or areas of the budget to close that budget gap. And by at least having some healthy reserves, we can go ahead and appropriate funds from those reserves to help us close our budget gap each year. Because you have a tax-based growth factor, which is usually what everyone, that's really brick and mortar construction throughout the district. And this is the growth of our tax base throughout the years. And that has swung drastically also. So you have, a low of 0.08% one year and a high of almost 2.63%. So that 2.63% is the increase. We increase our tax levy by 2.63% right from the start of the calculation in some years. And then the actual levy growth factor, which everyone really calls the 2%, and that our 2% hasn't been 2%. You can see for most years, the maximum is 2%, but we've had some years where it was as low as 0.12%. So just because of the way the calculations right now are determined and the way the numbers are so hard to predict every year, it does help us if we do have reserves and we are able to appropriate from those in years where our tax levy limit may be very low and we wouldn't be able to go out and raise those taxes needed to close our budget gap. But everybody here though has done a great job though during this time because we have been able to stay under the limit for 11 years and not have to make many reductions to program. We've been able to continue all of our programs throughout. So our tax levy increase of 2.5% is going to cost the average taxpayer in the town of Southampton and the town of East Hampton about $100 a year. So the median home value in Southampton right now is $874,800, and the median home value in East Hampton is about $905,000. And that equates to a little under $100 a year for Southampton and a little bit over $100 a year for residents of East Hampton. I also provided the numbers. If your assessed value is under that median of $500,000, or if it's over that median of $1 million, you can go ahead and kind of calculate what your tax levy impact will be for next year. You could predict and project. This is based on all of the assessed values not changing. So all of the current assessed values, this is based on them staying the same and the equalization rate staying the same and not changing from the current school year. So if there is any huge swing in assessed values or equalization rates going forward, if that's not usually determined until October, then we will come back and we'll do a presentation and let everyone know, how much this actually changed, if the actual increase was lower than this or higher at that time. And this hasn't changed since the last meeting. This is all of our revenues and other financing sources that support our budget. And for the 22-23 school year, we are receiving state aid increase, not a huge state aid increase, but state aid supports a little over 4% of our budget. We're hoping that when the state budget is approved or adopted on April 1st, that we do receive a little more aid. We would love to receive more aid from the state. And during the April 11th presentation, we'll incorporate any of those changes that are made to state aid once the state budget is adopted. We also have other revenues, of course, that support our budget. And those are a little over 4% also. The main revenue that supports the budget is really the tax levy. The tax levy supports the budget just under 90%. So, and we are appropriating some fund balance down here. Even though the fund balance is decreasing from the current school year, we plan to appropriate a little over $500,000 to support the budget for next year. And this is the total budget with the 2.5% increase.
Perfect. Can I just ask a question? Those non-resident tuition numbers,
Yes.
is the 2021 actual and then the rest are projected, or what you budgeted for?
So for the current school year for 21-22, we budgeted that we were going to receive $1 million in non-resident tuition, and it turned out that we actually looked at all of our list of students that are attending the district right now, and it looks as though currently we're going to receive $2 million in non-resident tuition. And so that's going to be $1 million over what we budgeted. So that's why next year we did increase that number by $500,000. We felt that conservatively we were going to be able to collect that additional money.
And what's the 821? That's actual receipts, or that was what you budgeted?
No, that's basically what we budgeted for the year before.
And what happened?
So the year before, I can actually tell you what we did the year before, because I should have those numbers. So we budgeted 821 the year before, and I'm thinking, what did we actually collect the year before? 2021 actual. Okay, so we budgeted $821,945 and we collected $1,244,000. So we actually collected $422,000 more than what we budgeted. But if you actually go back to the 1920 school year, you'll see that in 1920, we budgeted over $1 million in non-resident tuition to receive the previous year, and we only received $970,000. So every year, we don't normally end up with a surplus. I mean, the way we budget our non-resident tuition is we look at all of our current students that are here, and we basically just move them up a grade. You know, all of the students that are currently in 12th grade, you know, we take them off the list. And then all of the students that are going to be going back to Wayne Scott and Sagaponic for 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade, we remove those children off the list. And then we assume that everybody else is going to stay here for next year, and that's how we come up with the budget. But not every year we end up with a huge surplus in that line like we are going to end up this year.
We also, I think an answer to that also is, might be somewhat pandemic related. Yeah, and whether or not that remains consistent over time, time will tell.
No, I just wonder, I mean, it's a great thing, great source of revenue for the district, but that just sounds like a huge increase in the budget. That would hate us to be
It is a
caught.
huge increase. So, but looking at the numbers this year, we're actually collecting a little over 2 million, 2,042,000 is what we're projecting for the current school year. And it looks like we're still going to have, this year we have 77 students, and next year we're projecting 74.
What
Yeah.
ability it's a hard thing to predict, right? I mean, what,
Well, basically what she covered it, maybe not, she didn't drill down with any great degree of specificity. So in the past, what we've done is the building principals have actually made inquiries of the families. Do you plan on coming back? And that's not binding.
sure.
But my comment about COVID is it definitely changed the landscape for some families, and they were unsure about what they were going to do. I mean, going back to the shortfall, what was it, about 100,000, Jennifer, from 1 million?
In 1920, we actually collected 60,000 less than what we budgeted.
Yeah, we
In
can't use-
2021, that's when we started moving, we started
Right.
collecting.
So I
a lot
think,
more.
the prudent thing to do, if we collected 2 million and taking a multi-year view, we were at 1 million roughly, or 900, 2 or 3 years ago, to 1.5 seems like a reasonable middle ground, and we'll see where we're at.
But was this number driven driven mostly from like Wayne Scott and Sagaponic, or just out of district remaining students?
We have, for the current school year, we have 77 students attending.
Yeah.
27 of those students are parentally placed.
Okay,
42 of those students come from Wayne Scott, and eight of those students come from Sagaponic. So we do receive most of our students from Wayne Scott.
so was it most of the increase, did it come from like Wayne Scott, or
No,
did it come
most
like?
of the increase, so we increased 26 students this year compared to last year.
Uh-huh.
And the majority of that increase came from parentally placed students. Last year, we only had 13 attending. This year, we have 27.
And do we have the breakdown? What was it, mostly like elementary or middle school or high school?
I have the breakdown. I could probably provide you that
No, I'm just
information at the next
curious, like,
meeting. I
you
have
know,
the list.
yeah.
Because that's what we do. We basically take, any 4th grader, we move them up to 5th grade next year. We're
Mhm.
assuming that they come back. And then we conservatively say, are we really going to collect $2 million next year? Maybe not, because a lot of the students might return, back to where they came from, their home districts.
Mhm.
So that's why we didn't budget for $2 million next year. We made sure that we were only going to budget for 1.5.
Well, were we at one point, because of COVID restrictions, spacing or anything, was there a point where we're limiting you?
Yes.
Not-
We did do that the previous year. Was it last year, Mr. Malone, at the elementary, we put a cap on it?
I think
And then
elementary we
this
didn't do,
year-
but then we allowed middle and high school, right?
Yes.
So we didn't tell them, if you've been here already, we didn't say you can't
No,
go back
if you were
next year.
already here, you were
Yeah.
guaranteed a spot moving forward, but new entries at the elementary school, we capped because of spacing.
And we're expecting to not have to do that next year, or is that?
Well, this year we were able to go back to more normal class size, so
Okay,
we had a little bit more available.
so that would suggest that we're being
Some of it.
conservative.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
Okay. You're welcome. So now we're going to just go through the budget. This is a summary of the budget. So, and this is broken down by function or department. So our total budget for next year is $45,993,327. And that's broken up on this slide by general support, instruction, transportation, employee benefits, debt service, and interfund transfers. So general support, it includes appropriations for the Board of Education, the district clerk, the superintendent's office, the business office, facilities, security, insurance, public information, and central data processing. So there's a lot included in general support. And these functional areas are actually, these are actually state account codes. And this is how we have to report our budget and a lot of our, our budget to actual numbers. We report these numbers to the state in these categories. So that's how the budget is driven, and that's why the slide is broken down this way. Instruction includes appropriation for all elementary and secondary instruction, as well as expenditures for special education programs and extracurricular activities, which includes clubs, intramurals, and inter-school athletics. Transportation is strictly transportation. So this is all in-house transportation and all contractual transportation. And these areas do include salaries. So you have all, this area includes salaries and benefits, contractual costs, supplies and materials, equipment. You have debt service separately, you have employee benefits separately, and you have interfund transfers separately. You can see that the increases and decreases in each area are driven. I'm going to show you on the next slide what they're driven by. But there were salary increases basically in all areas. But some of the areas had decreases in other areas that offset the salary increase. So when you look at general support and you see a 5.9% increase in general support, that increase is really broken down. Next slide, I'll show you. That 5.9% increase in general support is really broken down with salary increases of $78,513. And then there are other areas in general support that increased, such as legal costs, judgments and claims, architect and engineering fees. We're going to be installing a new bus lot fence around our bus lot. And we also did have to increase our BOCES budget just in this area, in our central data processing area. We talked during previous presentations how we were moving some of our IT costs to BOCES in order to generate more aid and in order to comply with the New York State Ed Law 2D requirements for protecting personal information. So that 5.9% is not just salary increases, it's increases in various other areas. If you look at instruction, you have instruction going up by a little under 2.6%. Salaries actually in the instructional area, and this is salaries for all of our current staff and then all of our staff that we had to hire this year. So we did hire additional staff this year, and that is part of this increase. And you can see overall, we had a salary increase of over $1 million in just the instructional area. And we were also able to make decreases though in instruction. So the net result is an increase in instruction of $632,487 versus the $1 million. Transportation salaries went up by $31,000. Overall transportation is increasing by $50,000. So there was like another $20,000 worth of transportation increases in other areas. It was mainly the contractual area. Employee benefits, I'm going to show you in a later slide why those increased by almost $500,000. And then we had decreases in debt service because we did pay off some of our debt this year, and some of our debt did fall off our books. And we also had a decrease in interfund transfers, and interfund transfers is also debt service. So when you look at this line for debt service, this is really just debt related to our tax anticipation note. All of our bonds are paid in our debt service fund, and the interfund transfer of $320,000 is really the decrease in our bond payments going into next year. So this is the budget also, the same budget, the same number on the bottom, but it's broken down by object of expense or type of expense. So you can see, and these are all the account codes that are developed by the state, the accounting and reporting manual. And this is the breakdown of all the increases. This is personal services, this is salaries, this is employee benefits, and then you see all the decreases in contractual costs, the decrease in the interfund transfers, which is the debt service, Our BOCES budget decreased by just under $50,000. Our tuition did go up. We did have an additional student that we had to pay tuition for, so that tuition increase of $114,000 is included in the budget. Materials and supplies overall, district-wide this is, decreased slightly by $13,000. Equipment really remained flat. There really wasn't too much of a decrease in our equipment lines. This is our interest on our TAN, so there's a $100,000 decrease there. Textbooks are remaining flat, small increase of $3,000. Computer software is going down slightly. And overall, the dollar change to our budget is $1,121,788. So we were able to offset many increases in many of the other areas. Let's go through some of the increase now to employee benefits. So employee benefits did increase by almost $500,000. That increase is really being driven by our health insurance and our health insurance costs. So if you look at the next slide, you'll see that our family health insurance plan going into the school year, which is, these costs are fiscal year, or calendar years. So when you look at the 22 rate, this is January to December's rate. So we actually had to absorb almost a 13% increase in family health insurance this year alone. When we originally did our budget, we budgeted that the rate would go up 10%. So we did have to, we did have to absorb a much larger increase than we thought would happen for this year. Next year, we actually did budget for another 10% increase. So we're hoping that we don't see this huge increase like we did this year. I mean, that's based on trend, really. When you go to previous years, you'll see that during this 2018 school year or calendar year, we had a large increase. And then the year before in 2017, there was a large increase in that family rate. But you can see after that, I mean, it really does go up and down. So it is hard to plan whether or not the rates are going to, skyrocket. But just that 13% increase in the family rate, and then also this 11.3% increase in the individual rate, that brought our health insurance budget up by almost $290,000. It also increased our health insurance opt-out budget because whatever opt-out payments we make to staff who don't sign up for health insurance is based on the rate. So that budget went up by a little under $100,000 or $92,000. And then our Medicare reimbursement budget also is projected to increase by about $41,000. So these rates, no one knows what the rate is going to be next year. We don't find out what the rate's going to be until like November, December. So we try to plan for, a normal increase, but as I said, you never know. Some years you could see all the years, the rates in red, we actually had decreases in some years.
Jennifer, I just want to add for those that might watch this and not be aware, is that the health insurance provider is determined at a state level, and what they charge is determined at a state level.
Mm-hmm.
So as a district, we can't go and get another health insurance provider and just replace the one that exists.
Yeah, we're part of the New York State Health Insurance Program, and they basically provide insurance to all local municipal employees. So we really don't have any negotiating power to negotiate with them. Their rates are set in stone, and they, dictate the rate every November, December, and then that's when we're starting to plan for the increase at that time, and we let our employees know whether or not their premium payments are going to be increasing. And then the other area of employee benefits that is increasing is our retirement system budget. So we have the teachers' retirement system, which covers all of our instructional staff, and then we have our employees' retirement system, which covers the pension costs for all of our non-instructional staff. So our teachers' retirement system rate went up. It went up 10.5% from the current year, which was 9.8%. So that increase in rate generated an increase to our budget of $116,581, or 6.01%. The employee retirement system rate is actually going down. So you can see for the current school year, our rate was 16.2%. And next year, the rate is going to be 11.6%. So this did help us a little bit. Just because the rate is based on salaries, and our salaries did increase going into next year. The decrease was $27,121. So that did help us a little bit covering the increase in the teachers' retirement system. And all of these rates are also determined by New York State. These rates aren't, we have no impact on whatever these rates are each year. The TRS Retirement Board determines the rate for TRS, and the New York State Local Retirement System determines the rate for the employee retirement system. And this is just a summary of some of the other areas of employee benefits that have gone up. Social Security increased slightly this year. The increase was actually, it really wasn't slightly. It increased by $51,375. The increase in Social Security costs are tied to increases in salary, and the Social Security maximum goes up every single year. So the maximum went from $8,853.60 to $9,114 for what we have to contribute for employees. The dental and compensated absences are projected to decrease slightly. So our dental insurance, if you look at the previous years, we haven't received any huge rate increases with our dental insurance. So we were able to reduce that by $10,000. And our compensated absences is what we pay out to our employees at the end of the year who don't use all of their vacation and sick leave. We were actually able to decrease that line also. Our workers' compensation costs, we're part of a consortium, and those costs are just projected to increase slightly. And a reason why our workers' compensation costs, sometimes when you look at our loss runs, you'll see that we have years where we do have much larger losses than the previous year, but that rate is actually determined looking at all factors. And we do have a workers' compensation reserve. And because of our workers' compensation reserve, which has well over $200,000 in it, our rate actually stays stable because of that reserve, because they do know that our consortium knows that we can tap into that reserve just in case if we need to. So we don't have to pay as much of an increase each year in workers' compensation because of that reserve. Our unemployment insurance, we were able to decrease because we saw some large increases in unemployment during the pandemic when we were not paying most of our hourly substitute staff. So they were able to go out and collect unemployment insurance. And our disability insurance is also basically not projected to change. Disability is going to stay flat. It's a very small amount. But the unemployment insurance, you can see this year, we haven't actually paid out any unemployment insurance costs. So next year, we're just going to cut that budget down in half, and we'll reduce that by $25,000. So, and then we talked a little bit during the last few meetings. Actually, we talked a lot about the unit ventilator project and how we plan on using grant funds to replace unit ventilators that are currently in the elementary school and the high school, and also install new unit ventilators in the 1907 wing of the high school, of the middle school, high school in Pearson. So I just want to draw your attention to this slide. And when you look at this slide, this is the 1907 wing of the Pearson Middle High School. And when we worked with the architects, the main objective was to improve indoor air quality and use the grant to really improve all of the student-centered spaces. So all of these areas in blue are classrooms, and all of the areas in blue will be getting new unit ventilators as part of this project if the voters do approve the proposition. But you'll see that there are a lot of areas in white, and these areas are really offices and office space. These offices are not receiving, as part of this project, new unit ventilators, but what we are doing is we are looking to install split air conditioning units into those areas that are not student-based. Those areas are more office spaces or break rooms really for our staff. So those, we plan on having those spaces cooled, but they're not going to be getting new unit ventilators or unit ventilators replaced in those areas because those areas don't have them. We do plan on putting split AC units though in those areas. And this was a summary of the cost again. We are going out and we will be asking the voters to supplement the cost of this project. We do have grant money that will pay for some of the project. But in order to get the whole project done, we are going to have to go out and have the voters approve the use of our capital reserve to pay for the project. By using the capital reserve, this will not have any impact on the tax levy. We basically have this money set aside already in the bank, and we're asking the voters to approve up to $2.5 million of that money for us to move forward with this project. And this is the proposition that they will see on the ballot on May 17th.
Jennifer, what's in that fund now and what will be in it if it's approved?
So we have $4.4 million currently. Okay. So our balance at June 30th, 2021 was a little under $4.5 million. This project is not going to be getting done until the summer of 2023 and the summer of 2024. So at the end of this year, we plan on depositing $1.5 million into this reserve. And at the end of the 22-23 school year, we plan on depositing another $1.5 million. So before the project is even starts, we're projecting that the capital reserve will have just under $7.5 million in it. Summer of 2023, we will have to reduce that by $1 million, which would pay for the unit ventilator replacement project. And then we will deposit another $1.5 million at the end of June 30th, at the end of the 23-24 school year. And then the summer of 24, we'll have the unit ventilator installation project where we will have to draw down another $1.5 million. So after this project is complete, we plan on having a little under $6.5 million in the capital reserve after the summer of 2024.
And you expect the 1.5 deposit to continue every year?
Yes. So basically this year, just that tuition revenue alone helps us put that $1.5 million in there. At the end of next year, the budget does include, there are contingencies always built into the budget, and at the end of the year, we do end up with funds left over. I talked about how we budget every year for health insurance to increase by 10%. Sometimes health insurance only increases by 2%. Then we have surplus there. So really, this is really just surplus funds at the end of the year that we have, and that we're able to deposit into our capital reserve. The capital reserve, of course, when we did our reserves plan back in November, December, we did talk about the importance of the capital reserve because we have so many other projects that need to get done in the buildings. And I know Ryan and Yorgos sat during our facilities planning committees, and you can see, there's millions of dollars worth of work that needs to get done still. So to be able to use the capital reserve and not affect the tax levy is just a great thing.
Now our bond rating is very good in part
Yes.
because we have healthy reserves. You expect that to continue even?
Yes, because the reserve balances aren't going to be changing drastically, and at the end of the year, so our bond rating should remain the same.
Okay, and you're
going forward.
comfortable with those as still being healthy?
Oh,
Given
yes,
both the
definitely.
deposits? Okay.
We, last year, the voters approved the continuation of the capital reserve. So $1.5 million is the maximum we can actually add to the reserve at the end of every year.
And we're maxing it.
And we're maxing that.
Okay, that
So-
sounds great.
So when do we expect to receive the grant money? The 650?
The grant money, as soon as we spend the money, we get reimbursed from them.
So after like year one in 2023, would we get part of it or we're
No.
gonna get everything at the end?
I'm gonna receive that grant money after the summer of 2023, because
Okay.
that grant money was really set aside for the unit ventilator replacement project. That money really wasn't set aside for the installation project. And there is a deadline, and there's actually a deadline to request those funds.
Mhm.
So we have to really try and get those funds sooner rather than later. So we'll be doing that
So
after the
that
summer of
650 is gonna
2023.
go towards the.
Well,
So in reality,
yeah,
it's not
so
a
when
million
you
and a
see
million and a half.
the
It's really
full cost-
315 we're spending.
Well, yeah, the full cost of the project is $3,150,000, less the grant funds of $650,000. So
But from a
it's
cash
2.5
flow
million.
point of view, I'm just trying to figure out like how that's gonna play out here.
Yeah, how it's gonna play out is this $1 million, that summer project is really gonna cost us $1,650,000.
Okay, got it. So we're gonna get the 650 right in the first year.
Yeah, because when you see the replacing the existing unit ventilators, that's gonna be $739 and $792 plus soft costs. So that summer project of 2023 is not costing $1 million. It's costing upwards of $1,650,000. And then this 1.5 million is right here. That's the installation.
What's the deadline you said that we have to,
Well, we have until September of 2023 to get those funds back.
okay,
So they gave us seed money, of course, that we can use to pay for architects and other soft costs. So we have that seed money, but then all of the rest of the money we get from them will be reimbursement. So we'll have to go ahead and request those
okay.
funds.
And if there are any delays or anything, is there any risk of losing that money or not?
No, we don't see that happening. I spoke to the architect and he said that he thinks the project will get approved by SED by the end of the summer, because all of these projects were got streamlined approval as soon as they found out we were using grant money. Because in the past, you'd have to wait sometimes a year just to get SED approval for a building permit. But since they were grant funds, they streamlined all the approvals. He hopes that we have the approval for this project by the end of the summer. He hopes to go out to bid for this project really early or mid-fall, because it takes 30 weeks for us to actually get these unit ventilators from the manufacturer.
That would be
And
one
then-
bid, Jennifer, for the entire project.
Yeah, we would look to use the same contractor for the whole project, but what we can do, we probably will be adding like add alternates to the bid, and we'll have flexibility in awarding the bid. So if we find that, what we'll do is we'll have one bid, but we may ask them to give us separate pricing. So you could ask them for a separate price for just the installation, and then you can ask them for a separate price for the replacement as one bid submittal. And then you can ask them for a price for the full project. And then when we analyze the bids, we're gonna do whatever is the most cost effective. If we get a bid submittal that's cheaper to have one contractor do the whole project, we'll go that route. If we have another bid submittal that from other contractors that show us that maybe we'll save a lot more money by having two different contractors come in, we probably will go that route. So. And this is really the schedule for the rest of the year, for the rest of the budget season anyway. April 11th, we're going to be asking the board to adopt the budget, and that's going to be a resolution on that agenda. We will do another full budget review, though. I'm also going to have the property tax report card prepared, and you'll be adopting the property tax report card also. And during that time, we're going to be in the background working on our budget statement that's required by law. That's going to be placed online. Our line item budget that we actually have already prepared, I'm going to have Mr. Fisher put our line item budget online tomorrow, so the public can look at that and ask any questions. The BOCES budget vote is going to be occurring on the 27th, so we may have additional another budget review on the April 27th. We'll have our budget hearing, which is required by law, on May 9th. And that's going to be another full budget review. But during the budget hearing, we're going to also give out scenarios of what happens if the budget fails. So if the budget fails, we have to have a contingency budget in place. And the contingency budget in place means that we cannot increase the tax levy at all. So we're going to present to the voters what would happen if the budget does fail and we don't have those additional funds, and how we're going to be able to still support our programs. And then the annual budget vote, of course, is May 17th. And absentee ballot information is included on this slide also. If voters do need an absentee ballot, they can go ahead and apply for one. This year, they did extend the one of the reasons for getting an absentee ballot could be COVID related, and that law was extended for this vote also.
While we're speaking of the vote, Mary, do you want to just give the public an update on the process for the opening board seats this year?
Nominating candidate packets are available. They're on the website. They're available through me. They're available through substitute district clerk, Vicki Lawrence. You have to have a minimum of 25 signatures of residents within Sag Harbor, 18 years or older, and they're due to me, the original, by April 18th, 5 p.m.
Any questions from board members for Ms. Buscemi? Very good, Jennifer. Thank you. Very thorough. That's why I think there's an absence of questions, because we reviewed it before. So we appreciate that.
Yeah. Thanks.
Moving on to section 7 of tonight's agenda. Is there a motion for consent agenda items 7.2 through 7.16?
So moved.
For a second.
Second.
A motion by Chris, second by Jordan. Any discussion? We're gonna manually vote, Mary, correct?
It's not letting me put Chris in as the motion.
Oh.
I will change that. And who
Someone else
second?
can make the motion. if that makes
Jordana
sense.
seconded it.
Okay. Chris, you're not in there. But if you just give me your vote, I will reflect that in the minutes.
I just voted online. It's popping up on my screen
No, it's not on mine.
as I'm logged
I'm
into the
having
meeting.
laptop issues today.
Okay.
Oh,
All right, I voted in.
Huh?
yes.
Yes.
Okay. That's unanimous.
And sixth graders were waiting with bated breath to see if their field trip was approved. So it's very exciting.
Great. Section 8 of tonight's agenda. Committee reports. If there is a report, we'll start with the Diversity and Inclusion Committee. If there's a report that anyone would like to share with the board and the public. Come on up.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Veronica Rodriguez Mora. I serve as the middle school assistant principal, and I'm also on this committee. So we have three main updates to share from our committee meeting on March 16th. One is that we are hosting a free event as part of our film series for teen and adults, featuring the film The Perks of Being a Wallflower. This event is occurring on Sunday, March 27th at 2 p.m. here in the Pearson Auditorium. Please email Betty Reynoso if you're interested. We'd like for you to register prior to the event, and all of that information is on our school website. Our second update is that our committee is continuing to research ongoing professional development opportunities. We have some solid leads, and we're waiting for some feedback from those leads. And then lastly, last year, there was an initiative by our committee to expand classroom libraries in the pre-K through 5 programs with engaging and high-interest books that cover diverse and inclusive topics and themes. We recently surveyed our teachers to gather valuable insight on the initiative and are currently reviewing their feedback in order to inform our next move. Our subcommittees will continue to meet next month, and we hope to have a bigger update when we come back to our board meeting in following.
Any questions from the board? Great, thank you so much, appreciate it. Next committee would be the Educational Facilities and Planning Committee.
All right, I'll do the update. So we had the last meeting March 16th. The focus of the meeting was going through the visual building inspection report with the focus on middle school in Pearson. The architect was invited, and then Ms. Carriero was also the guest, and she spoke about the future needs of middle school and high school. When we went through the maintenance report, it was just going through like what are the immediate needs for the next like couple of years, what needs to be upgraded. And then Ms. Carriero has some inputs about the vision for the future. I'm just going to bring up a couple of the points from there. Upgrading potentially the gym and the locker room, library, make the space more open, maybe upgrade the furniture, so the students can move like more easily within the space and make it more inviting. The bathrooms need renovation. The cafeteria potentially upgrading the furniture, and also the ventilation of the cafeteria. And I think that was it. Unless was there anything else? Yeah.
Any questions from members of the board or anything else anyone else would like to add?
I do have a quick question. In terms of, because there is a building, the facility that's old, there's certain parts of the facility that definitely needs some serious renovation. Is one of the outputs of that plan you're putting together, can be like a timeline or a phased approach of like, here's the laundry list, here's we think we're the to recommend to the board, here are the, we think are the largest needs. And
So
then
in the
a
beginning,
discussion of how we tackle
Yeah,
it.
we just went through the condition report
Right.
and what kind of things. So that was like floor maintenance, like, painting the walls, things like that, more the imminent stuff like plumbing work, things like that. And then we went on the more future needs, and that's where Ms. Carriero had that input.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So when do you think the time, and I'm not holding you to a specific date in general, but do you think it'll be like 2 or 3 more months and then you'll come back to the board with, we've reviewed the needs and here's, all the kind of.
No, this process is gonna last
Yeah.
at least another year.
Yeah.
So both buildings have millions and millions of dollars worth of renovations that need to get done for each of the buildings. And
Right.
also there was also a wish list of renovations. We did have a long discussion about the high school gym.
Mhm.
And the high school gym is something that we really need to rethink and maybe reconfigure. And we also have the architect, they actually need to go in now, once we give them a list of what our needs and wants, and bless you. They actually have to go and cost all of these things out. They have to come up with, what items. We have to prioritize first based on health and safety. So health and safety will be like the number one priority and addressing those needs first. And then later on in the list, we're going to be addressing things that we want to do. So the long range plan could be 5 years, it could be 10 years, it could be a 20-year plan. He's worked on plans that were 20 years long. We would like to keep it as a 5-year plan. The plan isn't, it's not due up to the state until 2024.
Right.
So this is going to really be at least another year, just working on dollars, cents, and prioritizing. And that's why we're asking for the committee members to actually sit on the committee for at least a 2-year span. So we're not having to go over everything now with new committee members for next year. So all of our committee, we have a lot of parents on our committee. We have a lot of staff on the committee. So we think that based on all the input from the administrators and them, that we would be able to get this done. But we don't really see, we're going to have the architect come in and give you a presentation on the visual building inspection based on all the changes and updates that have been done since he first did it. Because we're going to be taking all the HVAC projects off of the inspection. We're going to be taking all the masonry work off of it. And we'll do a presentation for the board based on that alone. But the full long range plan itself is probably not going to be presented to the board at least for another year because it's just such a big undertaking.
It's helpful just to manage expectations because we've been talking about getting to that discussion for a long time, but it's a very complicated place to go because it's not just a handful of things. It's really weighing all of the issues and I would assume you'll move forward like we have, that if there's any emerging needs that are health and safety that need attention in the short term, that gets done as part of our everyday business.
Yes, and a lot of those items also get done within Mr. Wilkins' budget.
Right.
So he included a lot of those items even this year. We have a lot of sidewalks getting done this year. We have some bathroom renovations later for next year. So a lot of these items are constantly being taken off the list, but then there's new items being added to the list. So it really is just like a living document.
That was kind of like the first discussion that we went through, like, what's more like the short-term, middle-term needs, and then what's, more the future needs. And then we even had like a discussion why we need like, the really like long-term future, like what the classroom of the future is going to look like. And that's some things that the architect can help us also give us input.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good.
And Ryan, you were at the meeting, you probably, we also met with Matt Malone.
So I was gonna say, the previous
Right,
meeting, we did a
previous
similar
meeting.
exercise with the elementary school. And we went
Yeah.
through some of their needs and wish lists and.
And one of their biggest needs, I think, was a space, really, because they're just so, there's a lot of constraints with space in that building. So we talked about
potential
needing more
expansion.
space. So,
Great. Well, that committee has a lot going on, so we appreciate work there. And, if we can continue the 2-year assignments, we'll work to do that because I think that makes the most sense in terms of consistency with everybody.
yeah, that would really be great because having to do this every year with new committee members is hard.
Good. We'll look into that support.
Mhm.
Policy committee, is there an update on the policy committee?
Yes.
Oh, there.
So good evening, everyone. I'm Carly Mears, People Personnel Services Director, and Chair of the Policy Committee. Just want to give you an update on the policy process and cycle. Our last policy committee meeting was March 10th. And in this district, we subscribe to Erie Policy Pulse, which every month we get updates on suggested policies for review. Typically, they come monthly, and sometimes it's just informational every month. So I just want to go through some of the policies and where we're at. Right now, with some of the reviews, policy number 6160, professional development, growth, and staff development, as well as policy 3220, use of assistance animals, will not be moving forward after discussion, will not be included in the manual. Not all of our policies are required regulatory to be in the manual. So when we do see a policy, sometimes we'll discuss whether or not we want to proceed with the discussion on those. Policy number 1510, regular board meetings and rules, we've already reviewed. It's in our, has already been updated, so we won't move forward with that because it's already included in our manual. Policy number 7552, student gender identity, we discussed at the last meeting. It has been accepted for review and research, and we'll be going to the second discussion at our next policy meeting, which is April 28th. Lastly, we have, do have a draft policy number 3420 on non-discrimination and anti-harassment in the district. That's been drafted and has been worked on since last year. We've been looking for some consultation from our attorney on titles in the district. We've gotten that consultation. The draft is ready to go, just with substitutions on the title. And you should be seeing that in front of you for our first read at the next board meeting. If you would like any more details on policy, you can check out our minutes, which are posted on the website. And again, our next policy meeting.
Great, thank you so much. Any questions for Dr. Muir? Great, thank you. Okay, we're moving on to public input number 2. Now would be the time if anyone here in person or online, raise your hand. You'll be recognized. You'll have 3 minutes. Same rules and procedures that I read earlier this evening will apply to public input number 2.
I remember that I had that item that I emailed you about that we're going to talk about.
I don't, Chris, what was that?
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't be on the spot. It had to do with, and Sandy had suggested that I add another one to it. So if we're going to do public input 2 afterwards, let me just jump in with those
Sure.
2. One is that Greg Ferraris had reached out to the board because there is I want to get this right. The Sag Harbor Community Housing Trust, the acronym is SHCHT. And the purpose of that trust is to explore what affordable housing could exist in the area. And they have asked for a volunteer from the board to be a member of that committee. And we are due to get back to Mr. Ferraris. So there was a committee similar to that. It might have been even the same name, I don't recall, about maybe 5 years ago. And myself and one of the board members participated. I'm happy to do it unless somebody, but if somebody else has a driving urge, then feel free to step up.
I don't mind participating. I'm already involved in the housing.
Ryan's monitoring that for East
committee
Hampton.
with East Hampton. I'm participating with the school district, but I'm happy to participate along with you.
Okay, that sounds good.
All right, well, I'll tell Greg that it'll be Chris and Ryan.
And then, and I could just be in transition from last time because I don't have 3 more months. And then the other issue, which is somewhat related, there was an article in the Sag Harbor Express, the March 17th issue, about that the village board is continuing to review affordable housing proposals in the village. And it talked about some benefits being provided to the volunteer firemen and volunteer EMTs. And then the next level would be to village employees. And I'm a liaison with the village, and I wanted to see if you felt it was a good idea to approach them to see if that employees of the district could somehow be incorporated into some benefits that had to do with affordable access to affordable housing. Because we know that, you know, we all the districts out here struggle in really not just attracting, but more retaining, you know, newer employees, because it's a struggle to be able to afford to live out here. So if you were comfortable, I would be happy to approach them if you thought it was a good idea to see if there was an opportunity for the district to participate in some way.
I personally think the town does that already as a Southampton town. I thought they were going to take the same regulations, but I think it would be good, in my opinion, it'd be a good idea for you to bring that up to them.
The article didn't reference the school district employees, so I thought, let's get in early before they're making decisions.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I saw that same article, but yes, we should,
Good idea.
I would think school district employees should be in that first group.
Then I'll reach out, and if there needs to be a meeting, maybe it makes sense for the two of us. to- What was that?
Great, thank you,
Thanks.
Chris.
What was the other?
I'll email Greg
Oh,
and
you
let
will.
him know that
Okay.
you will serve on that.
Okay.
Okay, public input number 2. Is there anybody here or online for public input number 2?
No hands online.
Any comments? 'Cause I can't read any comments from here, Mr. Fisher.
Not that I saw either.
I don't see anybody here in person. Next order of business is section 11, which would be, I'm gonna put a motion forward regarding the executive session for the board to convene to discuss the collective bargaining unit negotiations and contracts. If that motion shall pass, the board will go into an executive session and come out for the sole purpose of only adjourning the public meeting. No further action will be taken by the board. With that, is there a motion to convene into executive session to discuss the collective bargaining unit negotiations and contracts? Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Unanimous, Mary?
Thank you.
Thank you to everyone. who's-
We're in executive session. For everyone else, the meeting will be ending at this time, so have a good evening.
And all the employees that are in this room